We're back with a pivotal moment in the Iraq War. The president is set to make his big Oval Office address to the nation tomorrow night, formally declaring combat operations in Iraq over after more than 7 years. Of course, with some 50,000 troops still in the country, it's certainly too soon for a mission accomplished speech. So what will the president say? And perhaps more importantly, what should he say? Joining us now from Washington is Jon Soltz, chairman of VoteVets.org, and Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He's a senior fellow and external communications director at the Center for Advanced Defense Studies. Tony is also the author of Operation Dark Heart, which hits bookshelves tomorrow. Good timing. All right. Now, first, let me start with you, John. Look, he promised to get us out of Iraq, and he promised, the president did, to basically pay more attention to Afghanistan. Didn't he deliver on his campaign promise?
Well, he's done more in Afghanistan than he promised. What he initially promised was an increase of 2 combat brigades into Afghanistan, and we actually went up now 8 brigades. So he's actually taken a strategy that he opposed as a candidate in Iraq, which is a counterinsurgency strategy, and gone that route in Afghanistan, which is different than what he promised when he ran for the presidency. What he has done is he has stuck to the SOFA agreement in regards to Iraq. He has stuck to the timetable that his predecessor had agreed with Prime Minister Maliki. Has not deviated from that whatsoever, and I think tomorrow he's going to talk about that and how he's going to continue on that timetable to remove the final 50,000 troops. But the speech tomorrow is very dangerous for him. He cannot overpromise and certainly should not mention U.S. troops out of combat in any capacity, because that's basically would be misleading to the American public.
All right, Tony, what does he have to say to get credit on anything? I think that's what the administration is wondering. He's like, look, I told you I was going to get you out of Iraq. I'm getting you out of Iraq. I know there's 50,000 troops left there. I know it's, in my opinion, comical to call them non-combat troops. Right. They still have guns. They can do combat. But what more do we want from the guy? Is there anything else he can do on Iraq?
I think he's got to emphasize the fact that we're there to stay in some form. Let's not forget that World War II saw us victorious over the Germans and Japanese. We're still there. Even our most recent defeat with the Vietnamese, we now have a great relationship with them. We're doing a lot of things. So I think the president has to emphasize the fact that, as John just said, we're not entirely out of the woods, and this is but one signpost along a very long road of trying to stabilize the entire region. And Iraq has many forces on its borders which are inimical to its central government. The Iranians have their own interests, as do the Saudis. So this is where we're going to have to continue to work with them to help, I think, more external threats, focus on external threats, protecting their borders rather than internal. Although internal threats remain very active, and I think the less we're there, the more potential there is going to be for the Sunni and Shia and even the Kurds to begin picking up some of the bad habits they had before.
Right, but then we'd have to stay there probably for 100 years to make sure it's stable enough, and I'm not sure that'd get it done. I mean, John, what happens if first of all, do you think that we will have more civil conflict in Iraq as we withdraw? Is it related to the withdrawal, not related? And what do we do if there is?
Well, see, the thing about the Iraq War is the United States didn't start the Iraq War. The United States engaged within the Iraq War. The Iraq War's always been going on. It was going on long before we intervened, and when we leave, it'll just change the dynamic once again. We sided with the Shia and the Kurds in a civil conflict against the Sunni and Saddam Hussein. When we leave, that war will continue to wage. And I think that was the entire interpretation and debate over the past 7 or 8 years as we've talked. There's a lot of people, a lot of Republicans that felt this is a war that had to do with al-Qaeda. I think I come from the school of thought that felt this is an internal conflict. The United States sided on the side of anti-Saddam. Will there be conflict in Iraq? Absolutely. The surge, a huge failure, almost a greater failure than the invasion. The political dynamic, although the surge controlled tactically the ground, the terrain, the political dynamic in Iraq has not changed. There's huge issues with who's going to be the next prime minister, what's going to happen with the Shia oil law, with the oil law, and will the Sunni get into proceeds from it, and what about the Kurdistan issues in Kirkuk? So huge issues in Iraq, and there will be extensive violence after the United States leaves.
Tony, I got to kick that over to you. Do you agree that this surge was a total failure?
I disagree completely. The surge was successful regarding the military objectives it was assigned. So whether the political outcome after the surge warrants or produces what we want, that's entirely different. The military did its job. It gave the Iraqi government breathing room to reestablish itself. And let's face it, the Iraqi society has always had a central government. They understand power. I agree with John regarding we have a Tito-esque situation like we did in the Balkans and the Yugoslavia, where I think the warring factions fought long before we got there. They will fight long after we leave. However, we must stay engaged to make sure that our interests, whatever those interests are from now on, are looked at realistically. I'm not saying we should be there in the middle of the Civil War, but we have to make sure that we don't have the insurgents turn to terrorists and then begin striking out at our interests. That should be our focus.
Tony, that sounds like a recipe for disaster for me. That sounds like we want to just stay there forever to try to make sure that people don't become terrorists later. Then under that logic, you can stay in every country, in Yemen, in Somalia. I mean, there's no end to this thing.
The problem is we have to look at how we can develop the area economically. They have oil, they have resources, and I think obviously one of the things
what does that have to do with us? But that's their oil. Well, what does that have to do with us?
It has to do with economic stability. Look, one of the solutions
Whose stability, theirs or ours?
Well, their stability, which results in regional stability. I think we have to look at this as a region. Look, I was one of the guys who didn't think partition was all that bad an idea, because you're talking about factions which are essentially arrayed against each other because of artificial borders that the British laid down, over 100 years ago. So we've got to look at how we can go about trying to look at our interests, address things which are concerned to us,
Tony,
and stay out of the Civil War.
I got to follow up real quick again with you. But what did we win in Iraq? Did we win anything? What did we accomplish?
Well, I think we made some terrible mistakes in the way we went in. I think we used some flawed intelligence, and what we thought we were going in for, I don't think was there. I think that on retrospect, I'm not sure what we're going to walk away with, and that's something we're going to have to look at very realistically when we talk about going to war in the future. I think there's some bad things that happened, some good lessons we learned. The bottom line is we're not really leaving with all that much more. But the idea is there's a democracy there. Now, whether you agree with that or not, there's a democracy. It has a chance of now fostering itself and growing. And whether the Iraqi people own up to that and want that, it's really their call now. And that's why we won't know for a number of years if the surge was ultimately successful in achieving political objectives. Military objectives were successful. We were able to do what we needed to do. But politically, we don't know.
John, I got to come back to you for a real quick second here. Is Obama in Afghanistan really doing a pincer move here on bin Laden in Pakistan? And in that respect, isn't it successful, we hope, in squeezing the al-Qaeda in Pakistan rather than in Afghanistan?
Look, I'm not a fan of what the president's doing in Afghanistan right now in any capacity, because I don't think that you need 120,000 troops to chase around 50 to 100 al-Qaeda. He's transitioned this war from an anti-al-Qaeda war to a pro-Karzai war. I think that's very dangerous for him as we go across the border. But I heard that economic argument, over about, why Iraq's important economy, or these wars are economically important. And I have to tell you, VoteVet spent about $10 million promoting a new energy policy for this country, and that bill just went down. And I find it hugely unfortunate when we talk about the economic support that we receive from the Middle East, or the dependence that we have on that oil, and our Congress and our president couldn't get it together to pass an energy policy.
All right, John and Tony, strong opinions. I like it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.